Hello, hello! This is the second lesson of Columbus and the Pilgrims. Our lesson today is about King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. But before we start, I want you to imagine yourself traveling on a ship hundreds of years ago. Would it have been like a big cruise ship that we see today, or would it have been very difficult? Traveling on ships hundreds of years ago would have been very difficult and very expensive. Kings and queens were the most powerful and rich people in all of Europe, so they were the ones who would pay for ships and sailors to sail them. Today we're going to learn about a man named Christopher Columbus and his plan to get to the Indies. Here we go. Now that the land route to Asia was closed, kings and queens from all over Europe began looking for the best sea route to the treasures of the East. They greedily sought to claim rare and expensive Asian spices for their own countries. The race was on. In every European port, young navigators competed to lead adventures to Asia. They were anxious to try out new, lighter sailing ships that made it possible to sail faster and farther than ever before. One of these navigators was an Italian man named Christopher Columbus. Like all the others, he was an experienced sailor. What made Columbus stand out from all the other sailors was that he did not plan on reaching Asia by sailing east around the coast of Africa. He had a very different idea. Christopher Columbus wanted to sail west across the Atlantic Ocean in order to reach the Indies. He visited several kings in different European countries, asking for their help. Laying out his map, he tried to convince them that his idea was a good one. For many years, Columbus tried unsuccessfully to get the support of European kings and queens. The King of Portugal refused him. The King of Italy refused him. The King of England refused him. Only the Spanish seemed interested in his plans to sail west across the Atlantic. But they had turned him down too, because Spain was at war and they had no time or money for Asian trade then. Columbus knew that he could not make the trip without their ships and money. Now, 7 long years after Columbus first met with King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, he became hopeful that his long wait was over at last. As he rode down over the mountains, Columbus recalled his first visit to the great Spanish city below. Spain had been at war then. Now that the Spanish War was over and the Spanish king and queen had won, Christopher Columbus hoped that the victorious royal couple, newly rich with treasures they had taken from the war, would have time and money and attention to help him. At last he thought he might reach his goal of sailing west to the Indies. A Spanish army officer directed Columbus to a large fancy tent in which the king and queen were still living, for they had not even had time yet to move from their army camp into the beautiful palace. Still, they were hardly suffering. Their tents contained thick, beautiful carpets and full-sized beds. The royal couple sat upon thrones brought from their palace in northern Spain. They dined off plates made of silver, eating fine foods and drinking fine wine. Their many servants were there to take care of them. Most important, with the war over, Ferdinand and Isabella were too happy and proud to complain about much of anything. They smiled as Columbus bowed before them and told him to rise to his feet. "And now, Christopher Columbus," said Queen Isabella, "let us talk about your plan of sailing west to the Indies." Columbus's heart leapt within him. The queen and the king must have talked it over, and now they were ready to help him act out his long-held plans. Columbus was going to search for the riches of the East by sailing west. He would be in charge of a whole fleet or group of ships. Okay, couple questions for you. Who were King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella? King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella were the rulers of Spain who helped Columbus make his voyage possible. Who was Christopher Columbus? Christopher Columbus was an Italian navigator who wanted to sail west, not east, to the Indies. Why did Columbus go visit Ferdinand and Queen Isabella? Columbus visited them to ask again for money to help pay for his voyage. Why did Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand finally help Columbus? They had won the war and were ready to give attention and money to Columbus. Okay, guys, that's our story today. Thank you.